What we're talking about is the fact that a certain artist gave a certain tweet. All right. So this is where I have to be super careful. I know I need to give you context, but I don't want to give you context in the terms of trying to either inflate this comment or, be what you call salacious. None of that. But basically, the comment was from a young lady, artist named Kiera Sheard Kelly. So Kiera Sheard Kelly is well known in the gospel industry. She is the daughter of Karen Clark Sheard, who is another legend in the gospel industry. And I am going to try, as much as I don't want to do this, I am going to try to at least pull up some kind of context where you guys can see, because she might have taken this tweet down just because of all the firestorm and all the stuff that happened after it. But basically, if I could give you kind of like the background of it, she basically got married a few years ago, had a baby, and she's, she has a wonderful family and enjoying her family. And she basically tweeted as much that she's enjoying her family and said it in a very, very kind of what people are saying is a very risque way, that she is extremely happy with her husband and her children having been, and she used the word, and I say weird again, because I was like, I'm learning, okay, how do I say it? But I'm just going to say what she said, and I'll just kind of try not to get, myself in trouble, right? But she used the word guts. And so you can go into whatever thought process you want with what guts meant. So I am now looking at this and the firestorm of commentary. And you know what? It probably might be better for me, instead of bringing up her comment, it might be better for me to bring up some of the comments versus me talking about it and trying to comment on what I think or all that kind of stuff. It's probably better that I just read a little bit or maybe show what other people are saying, and I'll let that be your introduction to it so that I am not trying to like share stuff. So let's go over here, share screen, and let's do this. Let me go to Facebook. So here are the comments and the issues that are bringing up all of this information. Okay, and again, I'm not sharing this because I have any way. I don't want clickbait. I don't want any of that. Okay, and so Real Mike Media here. Y'all think she went too far, or are people too sensitive? Okay, so all of this is over, again, a phrase and a comment that people feel went too far, was either inappropriate, not Christian like, all those things. And so here's why I think we have to discuss this. The reason I think we have to discuss this is because, number one, this is a faith-based Christian organization that I run, that we are telling creatives how to operate in the mainstream without sacrificing your faith. So it's literally what this podcast, this platform is about. Two, this is very clearly something that got a lot of people upset on both sides. A lot of people on one side are saying, oh, this is why people do not want to be around Christians. This is why people feel like we are too holy roller, that a married woman cannot even make a funny statement about being with her husband and being happy with her husband and their relationship, right? And then there's the people who are saying, no, Christians should be above board when it comes to the way they operate on social media, the way they talk on social media, the phrases they use. This is where we have to draw the line and say that certain words are too far, that the coarse jesting and certain like things are not becoming for a Christian in the mainstream or even in gospel. In this case, it's really gospel because she's very much a worship leader, right? So here's where it comes back to us. And I'm going to ask the question because I do not want to give an answer. I want to hear from you. Is there a line, first, between what a faith-focused Christian creative should share in their personal life? This is, again, we're not talking about something that's not, allowed. It's married people talking about married things, but it's also in public. So Is it the way people say it? Is it what people say? Are there certain boundaries that we should have where we don't go to being what we call too authentic or too open about what we share? Or should we be more lenient and more understanding that in a social media world, people should not be as judgmental about people sharing what is going on in their lives, because we always say we want people to be open and honest. And then some people are saying we criticize them when they're open and share things that are really happening in their lives. And they say it in a certain way that we disapprove of, and then we crucify them on social media. So as you can see, I want to know what you think about this more than I want to give you my opinion. My opinion, honestly, is only going to be based on how I operate. Okay? So when I talk about this, I am not saying all Christian creatives should do X. All people who post on social media should do X. You all must not follow this particular example because blank. Like, I am not going to say that, because I do believe very clearly in God and Gigs that God leads each one of us in a specific way to a specific purpose and to speak to a specific audience. So there's certain ways that we have to operate if I am operating in one area, and I might change it if I'm in another area. So I think this is a hugely important thing to discuss before we get into the conversation, that different people will have different answers. And I believe both of them could be correct. Okay? I believe both people who say this was too far could be correct. And I believe in other situations, the people who say this is a bad example of people canceling and being very being very judgmental, and that being the problem. So there's where we're going to go. So let's look at this. Pamela, thank you for jumping in right away and sharing, because this is definitely a dialogue. I think it was in jest and harmless, but celebrity or not, we have to be careful about what we post and remember that we can't separate the name from the brand. With the praise comes criticism. Well said. And I love what you're now. I want to kind of just parse this for a second so I can make sure you are being heard. We have to be careful about what we post and remember that we can't separate the name from the brand. So I hear you there in terms of once your name is attached to a certain kind of approach. And again, I followed Kiera from when she was first singing on her mom's album. So I've not like followed her brand. So I honestly cannot tell you whether her brand is, in terms of married, in terms of what she shares about being married. I don't know if this is on brand or not, to be honest with you. And that's what I think is interesting. I don't know if this one phrase is like her going way off kilter with her approach to how she talks about her husband and her wife and her marriage, or if this is right on point with what she shared before, and this is the first time that somebody took offense. So I don't even know if this is on brand for her. And to that being said, I don't know if this is criticism from people who don't know her brand, who don't know that she is very open about how she expresses herself and how she uses certain phrases and how certain terms that they might disagree with, but maybe her audience has been good with this for years, and this is the way she has come to becoming who she is, and the phraseology has never bothered them before, and now people or outside her brand are like, no, it's not good. So I don't honestly know if she needs to separate the name from the brand, because maybe this is not a situation that she's worried about. I haven't heard her statement on it, but I think it's very interesting that that the backlash has been both sides, where people are saying she's married, this is the way she talks, this is fine, which implies to me that people were not surprised on one end. All right, LaShonda is checking in. Thank you so much, LaShonda, our ECE. If you don't know what the ECE is, that is the Established Creative Expert. She is expert in all things YouTube and all things Canva and all things small business and entrepreneurship. So I think regardless of faith, we should always think about what our audience is supposed to gain from what we share. What was our takeaway supposed to be with this post? Just a thought. That is another great point, that everything we share is generally, I'm being very careful here, generally supposed to be moving toward a object, a goal, something to share, encouragement. So usually, right, I think Shana, you would agree with this. It's usually entertainment, inspiration, or education, right? Those are the three things we usually share for posts. And then, of course, here's the fourth one, which I think this falls into, is the personal. I just feel like saying something, and it's more like just sharing, right? So I don't know what she felt our takeaway would be. I can tell you that I feel like it definitely goes into that entertainment area. And she is letting everyone know, as a wife and as a mother, this is what's happened. Now, here's what's interesting about this. I shared this very same meme, not the one that she said. Somebody else has been posting this on Instagram for a while, and it's the same ethos, the same comments. And again, ladies, help me out because I'm being very careful here. A lot of ladies I saw posting the same type of comment about the entire family, right? The entire family has been blank. And again, I'm being super sensitive. So I think it's just, again, interesting that this specific person said something similar to some other memes, and it was an issue because, like you just said, maybe the assumption is her takeaways, her expression is supposed to be a certain direction, edifying of this, or in certain ways. Again, I am not speaking for everybody who reads it because I am not the person saying, hey, this was wrong or this was off. I'm saying this is a key indication that we are not together when it comes to our I guess in terms of Christian creative life and gospel and the church. We clearly still have issues with the way we show up on social media. And here's why I think it's very interesting to all of us. I think Pamela said it, we are opening ourselves to criticism. And so it does define the way we speak when we see other people who are brought down for the way they speak. So the way I approach things might be different than the way she approaches it, but I'm going to be watching how this goes down and deciding if this is even my audience, one. Two, if this is something that I need to be aware of in the way I share things. Three, in the way that I help other people share things, because some people will not share at all because they get scared of that. Let me see. Thank you, Manuel. We must learn from me. Let's not say I think it's what you meant. We must learn from me. We must learn for me. I gotcha. Is the word balance? Are we just copying or being authentic? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, we must learn. For me, it's the word balance. Are we just copying or being authentic in our calling? That's good. Okay, I see. I apologize. I messed it up a little bit. I see what you're saying. Are we just copying? Again, I can't judge anyone. The Bible says, judge no man, okay? You're judged not that you not be judged. I have been judged, and I'll be very transparent now. I have been judged on what I posted very clearly in terms of my own leadership and my own spiritual covering. I've had to face this, and I've had to have that same conversation with what's okay in my house and what's okay with my wife wasn't okay with somebody else. And it was a hard lesson. I did not like dealing with that. I did not like being called on the carpet. But let me be clear. I was called on the carpet privately by my spiritual leadership. So I think that's another thing where I think might be very, very important to share. I think, LaShonda, you said it, her takeaway, we don't understand what her takeaway was, but there's another question, which is her spiritual leadership okay with it? Is her spiritual leadership, which is honestly her husband, is that being honored? Or are other people stepping in saying, we don't think it's okay, therefore it's not okay, when under spiritual authority and spiritual leadership, maybe, I'm just saying maybe, there was somebody else that said, we're good. And that is where I think we need to be super understanding that the entire argument comes down to me, personally speaking, what is expedient for the person and the audience and the people that you are reaching. And like you said, the takeaway. I don't think you could say there's a takeaway in the same way that you would say there's a takeaway from a scripture verse. But there is a takeaway that someone is saying that this is where I'm comfortable speaking, and this is how I speak, and this is how I talk. And this is where I, obviously, again, unless you've taken it down, feels this is like just way too much. I'm sure there's a response somewhere. But I feel this is a great indication of how you need to know yourself. You need to know why you speak, what you say on social, and be very, very clear that you are ready for both the negatives and the positives when it comes to this. And here's why I think I will lean at this side. At this point, I will lean on this discussion of how we respond. Less on what was said, more on how we respond. I do think this is one of those cases where there's less people who will say, thank you for calling it out, and more people who will say, here's why I don't feel comfortable around Christians and people like that. Because when you see what we get riled up about and why we get riled up about it, people on the outside might say, I don't understand. And they might say, okay, like I said, God and Gigs, this is where someone could say to me, I don't understand how you could play that song and then serve and worship the next day. How could you play that song that had that lyric? How could you do this? And I'm very familiar with that argument because this is literally why I started the platform, because I don't believe that qualifies, in this case, a tweet, in other cases, a song qualifies as the spiritual barometer of whether I am following God or not, is what came out of my lips the next day or whatever. Pamela says, that's a valid point. Some people test the waters to see what the response will be. That's true. Again, I can't judge anybody's faith or heart. We can see what the reaction is. And like I said, I got called out. So I know what it feels like to get called out. I do know what it feels like to get called out. It's not fun. And now like years later, and this is being very personal, years later, I agree with the person who called me out. I'm still at the same time remembering how I personally inside my home had to kind of reconcile that there were two different standards, that there was my standard and the standard in my home, and then there was a different standard outside my home, and I had to abide by another standard at that time that did not fit necessarily the standard that I had set and that my wife had set, which again, you need to be on the side of erring on the leadership of your home and the leadership of your church and the leadership that people are holding you to. You're going to be held accountable. And here's the thing I think is very important. Oh, really? Manuel, wow. Okay. See, okay. I'm glad you said that because I'm glad I'm not alone in that. So I'm not the only one that ever got called out. So here's what I'm saying. I don't know if we can come to it. You know what? We need to continue this conversation, number one. So if you are following me on social, obviously in the Facebook group, let's continue this conversation because I don't want to get stuck on this. I would love to talk about this the entire time. I think this is one of those things that we have to have continual discussion about because it's not a one and done. So we need to talk about this in 360 Gold. So Pamela, remind me on the 360 member call that we need to bring this up again and we need to go deeper and talk about like how do we actually parse out, when do we go too far? Is it too far to share? I'll be perfectly honest. There are some podcasts I haven't released yet because I'm worried about the same response. Not in terms of the same topic, but the same response about that's not Christian. I am very concerned all the time about whether I can post certain things about certain gigs because I feel like I'm going to get called out because so am I circumspect? Am I following Paul? Yes. Paul said that if your brother is weak, don't eat meat in front of them. If your brother is weak, then do not cause him to stumble. And clearly, and this is going to be very, 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 it's going to sound very judgmental, but I'm just going to go by the scripture. We got some weak people around us. We have some weak Christians. So because we have weak Christians around us, we have to be more careful. Okay? I said it. And I think I can stand on this one. Because we have weak Christians, we have to be more careful. I hate that though, because what it causes is this kind of a little bit of a line of inauthenticity that people sense. So when you do step over the line and they see how we react, they're like, oh, not only are they scared to talk about certain things, but when when we know who they are and they have to present a different face, now we know that somebody else is calling the shots. And that is not a good way to show up in the world. Paul said, I'll be all things to all people that I might win some. We get to choose our some. Lecrae's some is not my some. Kiera's some is not my some. I am being all things to all people that I might win some. So my some might cause me to use different language than your some. And if you're trying to reach your churchy some, you probably shouldn't say this. But if you're trying to reach other people, again, I'm not saying she is or isn't. So this is why, again, this is not about her statement. This is about us. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? What are you going to share? And how are you going to share it so that you can find your some and win your some? Because if you don't know what your some is, your language is never going to match that. And you're going to find yourself changing things for the wrong some. Okay? So don't change your language for the wrong some. Now, if you got the some that you know good and well that you cannot say certain things, then change your language, change your verbiage. Do not go out here and make people stumble, because that's not your some. But for some of us, we have different sums. And I am going to reach those people with the language and with the knowledge and with the post and with the things that will help them see me as who I am, so that I do not then cause them to stumble. My friend, thank you for watching this episode. If that blessed you, you got to make sure that you stay connected with this community and this channel so that you can get more where that came from. We're sharing great interviews, tactics, strategies, mindsets, lifestyle choices. Everything is going to help you become a totally confident creative. And don't miss an episode of the God and Gig Show. If you are staying connected to our channel, you'll be able to find us anytime we release new episodes. And you can check out some of our archives of almost 200 episodes now that we've shared over the last few years. Make sure you check out one of the suggestions right now, because it's probably perfect for you to continue to develop as a creative. And continue to stay connected with us, because we're here to help you become the creative that God created you to be. We'll see you in the next episode.